trip.
When I decided to take this drug, I was in a state where I'd do anything to get high. Although the experience itself wasn't too bad, after doing research on how dangerous this drug is, I don't ever want to do it again. My mom also looked after someone in intensive care who developed a psychosis after using Datura. It started at my mate's house. I made up a tea solution with 1.5 flowers and let it sit overnight. When I woke up, I downed the tea on an empty stomach. The first effects I noticed was a dry throat and mouth, so dry I couldn't even swallow saliva or drink water. It felt disgusting. I started to feel nauseous and ended up throwing my guts up. Once I'd thrown up, I felt better, but strange. I decided to lie down, and as soon as I closed my eyes, I experienced some strange CEVs. They weren't seen with my eyes, but vividly in my mind, like if someone was to visualize an object. The difference was I had no control over what I visualized, so it was like I watched a movie played out in my head. I saw some awe-striking things with lots of detail and color. As I was lying on the bed, one of my mates started talking to me. I replied and we had a short conversation until I opened my eyes and noticed he was at the other end of the room. Everyone was staring at me because I'd been talking to myself. I shouted, "How did you get over there so fast? Wasn't I just talking to you here?" And he said no as they all laughed. I found it quite amusing and started laughing too. This continued to happen as I closed my eyes again. It was like I'd fall into conversing with them. Without realizing it, I do it unconsciously, forgetting it was fake and had happened previously. As soon as I opened my eyes and realized that no one was there, I'd realize I was talking to myself again. Very strange. I felt much better now. The dryness of throat and mouth had disappeared, and I no longer suffered from any nausea, so I decided to walk into town with some mates. I don't remember much until we got into town and decided to catch a bus home. We jumped on the bus, got our tickets, and sat down. I thought 2 other mates were sitting in the back as I was down in the front, so I shouted out to them as they shouted back. I later found out that my friends were not on the bus, and I was just embarrassing myself. The bus drove on its route until it reached my street. The driver drove right past my street and I shouted, "No, turn right, you missed my house," expecting the driver to deliver me to my house. I realized I had to get off at a stop and wondered why I'd shouted at her. I got off at the next closest stop and began my walk home. I have no idea why I decided to go home whilst on Datura. Dumb idea. On my walk, I was alone, but I kept having conversations with my friends in the same way I had the conversations on the bed. I'd be walking, and I'd hear someone talk to me and reply to them. Then, as I turned to look towards the voice, I'd see them for a split second until they vanished into thin air. I believed I was with around 4 or 5 people when I was alone the whole walk. I decided that all my friends had invisibility cloaks, and they were playing tricks on me. Every time I looked at them as they disappeared, I got really mad because they wouldn't stay visible, and I shouted and cursed at them. At one point, I was trying to pull trees out of the ground believing they were hiding underground. I also searched through people's gardens looking for where my friends had gone. I passed quite a few people while undertaking these strange acts and got very strange looks from people. I ignored them thinking my actions were perfectly normal. On the walk home, I continuously found a cigarette in my hand to light, and I'd put it in my mouth and take a drag, but not feel any smoke in my lungs. I'd look at my hand and notice that the cigarette had disappeared. I also felt and heard my phone vibrate and ring in my pocket. I'd pull it out, answer it, and started talking to someone on the phone when I noticed it went silent. I'd look at my hand and realize that the phone was gone. This kept happening quite a few times, and no matter how many times it happened, I was unable to realize it was a hallucination until after it had disappeared. Once I reached home, my mother opened the door. I introduced my friends asking if they could come in for a bit. I went into the kitchen and told my invisible friends to make themselves at home and asked if they were hungry or thirsty, all while my mom watched in disbelief. I remember my mom asking where my friends had gone, and I looked around noticing they had disappeared. I told her they were probably under their invisibility cloaks or hiding in the bushes outside. She sat me down and asked what drugs I had taken. Not realizing how fucked I was, I lied and said none. She ended up telling me she'd called an ambulance, thinking I had gone insane, which caused me to run away as fast as I could from her house. I ended up walking back into town and was talking to my invisible friends as I walked through the main street. I decided to start walking back to my friend's house thinking I was with 2 other people the entire time, and I was furious as they kept disappearing on me. I reached my friend's house, and by then, the drug had worn off. I kept asking my friends if they had been with me at all today, and they said no, they'd been at home. Confused, I realized I had been delusional on Datura all day, and told my friends as they laughed at my strange conclusions and experiences. Datura was very strange and very confusing. Whilst on the drug, you don't know what's real and what's not, and it puts you in a dreamlike state where you can accept very delusional beliefs. Although the experience wasn't frightening, it was very confusing and frustrating, and I don't plan on doing it again. I should probably write this all down before I forget, as a lot of it has already left my memory. I have always been interested in deliriums and already have experiences with nutmeg and DPH, but Datura is what has really piqued my interest. I brought this up to a friend of mine who says he knows where some of those plants are growing. We walk over there and harvest some leaves to smoke to test the waters. Next time we are going to harvest the seeds and use those to hopefully go further. 12 o'clock. Me and my friend B walked down the street into a nearby forest with the leaves we harvested and a pipe. We also brought cigarettes in case we needed to take the edge off. 12:30. B has already smoked his dose. He doesn't say anything other than, "It doesn't taste as bad as it smells." I bring the pipe to my lips and light. I waited till the plant matter was glowing red, and then I took a slow and deep drag. B was right, the taste was very faint. However, it was starting to burn, so I coughed the smoke out. As soon as I do this, I feel like I just shrunk down by 3 feet. B says, "God damn, I feel high already." "Me too," I reply as we start heading back to meet with another sober friend, C. 12:45. On the walk back, I start to feel like I'm being grabbed and pulled down, but at the same time very light on my feet. B won't shut up and keeps bursting into laughter. I start hearing a faint mumbling in the background, and I have this horrible feeling I'm being watched or followed, so I take a cigarette and struggle to light it in the rain. 1 o'clock. I finally get the cigarette lit right as we near C. Another friend of mine drives by and stops on the side of the road to say hi. He is with his mother who is against smoking, and I had no idea I even had a cigarette in my mouth and didn't realize it until B called me out for it. I take a long drag from the cig. Ah, sweet nicotine. I can feel the anxiety melt away with every hit. We finally meet up with C, who immediately notices something and asks, "What the fuck are you guys on?" We try to explain to him what Datura is, and he replies, "So you smoked a random plant out of the ground? Dumbasses." It rains even harder as my vision starts to fog. 1:15. The slightest noise will cause me to jump. Not the intensity of DPH, but still enough to be an inconvenience. I see people walking on the other side of the road who aren't actually there, and dogs running into the middle of the road only to get hit by a car and vanish into thin air. If I stop walking, the ground under my feet dissolves, and it feels like I'm walking on stilts and I'm about to clip into the ground. Sometimes I do just that and realize that my feet aren't touching anything and I have no legs. The ground is up to my waist. I can't tell noises real from fake anymore. The high itself is very comforting though, so I try to enjoy the euphoria and not get distracted by the delusions. C tries to light a cigarette, but can't because of the rain. 1:30. We stop at a table just outside of Sunripe to eat. I look at myself in the reflection of the window. It stares back at me and calls me a bitch. I insult it back, but then I feel this sense of danger and apologize before it attacks me. C says I'm fucked. B just feels tired at this point, and I can't recognize anyone including myself and my phone camera. Everything just looks off. I try to listen to music, but I keep hearing fast footsteps as if someone's charging at me, so I take my earbuds out immediately. C leaves. 2 o'clock. B is perfectly sober at this point. I think he had the same amount as me, but I don't know. I do have a very low tolerance to deliriums. With DPH, I only need 200 milligrams to give me full-blown hallucinations. I decided to take the city bus back to my house and say goodbye to B. The bus ride is a blur. It feels like I walked through the bus straight into my front door. It felt completely natural at the time, however. Looking back, I'm very lucky I actually got to my house. 3 o'clock. I thought I was coming down. I was wrong. I call over yet another friend, D. I text a group chat I'm in asking if I smell like cigarettes, thinking they could answer me. I am extremely tired at this point. I look over on my wall and I see something crawling on it. Spiders. Cue blackout. 6 o'clock. I'm not in my room anymore. I'm in a restaurant with D eating fish and chips. The room looks very small and it's closing in on me. Everything looks very off, like your vision on high-dose edibles, but more sinister. I think we had a conversation about murder. Another blackout. 7 o'clock. I'm back in my room, spiders galore. I feel like a Pablo Picasso painting with all my limbs having improper proportions and having like an undersized hitbox, if you get what I'm trying to describe. Blackout number 3. 8 o'clock. I'm in a car with my mother and possibly brother. I can't tell who's talking, him, her, or the other peculiar man in the back seat. I try my best not to audibly answer anything. He says not to raise any suspicion that I am tripping. It's very difficult. On the ride to wherever we were going, I kept seeing people running across the street that when I look back vanish, and very tall figures within the trees in the distance. The man in the back seat is trying to kill me. 9 o'clock. I remember watching TV. I don't remember the show, but there are bugs all over the walls. The man in the corner won't stop staring at me. I'm hearing whispers from the kitchen. 11 o'clock. I try to sleep. I can't relax over the breathing coming from the foot of my bed. I could feel its breath. Itching. Lots of itching. Can't sleep. I'm dying. I've died multiple times already, and I'm going to die again. I hope this is the last time. I walk outside. It's daytime. There's a girl talking to me. She looks dead. She tells me that I'm next. I snap out of it. Back in my room, she's standing in front of me. Huge bugs everywhere. None of this seems to bother me anymore. I have multiple more strange occurrences like this, but I do not remember them. 5 o'clock. I think I finally fell asleep. Vivid nightmares. Not scary ones, just disturbing. They don't bother me. Day 2, 11 o'clock. I feel exhausted, still seeing spiders and shadow people. 8 o'clock. Visuals subside, memory still very hazy. Auditory hallucinations continue. I'm actually able to sleep this night. Day 3, 10 o'clock. I think I sobered up around this point. Vision still blurry and mild tinnitus, but other than that, I'm back to normal. And yeah, that's it. I actually found this really fun despite what it may have sounded like. I do like horror and seem to have a strange liking to disturbing things, so that may be a part of it. Hopefully next time I can go deeper, fully dive into this other world. TLDR. First experience with Datura. Pretty enjoyable but disorienting and disturbing. Hard to tell you're even tripping until you have a moment where you temporarily snap out of it. After smoking a bowl one day in the park, my buddy Cracker finally showed me and my brother a Datura tree. It was a normal day, after lunchtime, and we were all feeling pretty good. The white flowers were big, but I still managed to eat 4 of them, as vile as they were. This is where the remapping of my brain began. The next few hours I spent in the hot sun. Within the first 3 hours of taking the flowers, I could hardly move my limbs. I was experiencing a slow tranquilization. Shortly after school got out, I went home for a nap. Already I was experiencing the dreamy state associated with the poison in Datura. I passed out at some point, and then I'm quite sure I had to get up and leave my house. My father told me that I was basically sleepwalking. I was walking around Berkeley with no clue in my head of where I was or what was happening to me or what I was on, but I did always have a cigarette. I can't be sure what happened between the point where I was passed out and the point where the cops picked me up trying to pick up an apple I hallucinated. They handcuffed my dissociative ass and told me to sit down and wait for the ambulance. The cops picked me up a good 2.5 miles away from my house. I've read a book about Datura since then, and it's called The Devil's Weed as an immensely powerful ally, giving me the most ability to manifest hallucinations. It invigorates my body, and I guess that's how I got so far. What really sucked was that I had only boxers, a t-shirt, and one shoe. The ambulance took me to the mental hospital. At the mental hospital, I was still tripping hard. After I signed lots of forms and such, they dosed me really good with some pills, antipsychotics and tranquilizers probably. I didn't sleep for the first couple nights. I kept thinking there were people hiding in the curtains on the windows of my room who were talking about me, and then my brother and an ex-girlfriend would come from under the curtains, and somehow we escaped the hospital and got into a car and parked in an alleyway. At this point, I got out of my bed in the mental hospital room and opened the door, which opened into the hallway of the hospital. They told me to go back to bed, so I did. This happened again many times, like a recurring dream. The bed I was sleeping in appeared to be made out of dead, or even alive, aborted fetuses. In the bed next to mine, I hallucinated dog-human hybrids, struggling to breathe. After quite a while of handling the fetuses, I switched beds. On the end of the bed, I thought I could see a joint. I tried to rip the joint out of the sheet, but it appeared to be attached. I also hallucinated a burrito in the blanket. On the ceiling, Ren and Stimpy and Star Trek were on. At another point, I was blind. One day at the hospital, I hallucinated a boat race on the wall, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was being assassinated. This was one of the most stupid things I have ever done. Please give this video a like if you're enjoying it so far, and subscribe if you're new or haven't already. Also comment down below if you have any Datura experiences. It's rare to see any of my viewers to actually have had an experience on it. Alright, let's go on to the next story. As anyone who knows of this drug, the realms this plant may show you are difficult to put into words, as though describing another sense. It was a July evening, calming nature surrounded me, and the glistening orange beam of sunlight fell into the green canopy, emitting a spiritual aura that was to commence me on my journey. For the last few weeks leading up to this, I had wanted to get my curious hands on Jimson seeds. I had been doing a year abroad in Berkeley, so psychonauts were common. After reading about this mysterious plant, I was more than just intrigued. Having previously had a passion for salvia and other natural deliriants, Datura seemed to be the missing link. I had never fully broken through, but psychedelics had become an almost cult-like obsession of mine. You see, I wasn't interested in the highs, the buzzes, or the euphoria of most substances. What got me was what they don't speak about, the spiritual groundbreaking reality some hidden plants could take you to. This made everything else irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. This Valhalla was one I could really see without having to imagine. So, after reading about this substance, my intrigue was too powerful. I felt as though I was chosen, as though this was now my turn to peek behind the curtain. Eventually, after countless dark web searches, my efforts came to no avail. In fact, this only made me more desperate to find it. Of all the psychonauts I knew, only one could help me in my search. This guy was called Jack. He was to become the one person I could take this with. After a few days of waiting, I was awoken from my sleep to see that I had managed to find some seeds. I froze. Reality hit me. This was real. My brain was anxious, but my desires prevailed. The mix of adrenaline and excitement led to loss of sleep that night. After having prepared the day for this trip, we drove to the forest in silence. We took the seeds. I felt belly-aching nausea for the first 5 minutes. Now we wait, I thought. Jack stood watching as a trip sitter, slowly roasting a joint as I prepared myself. All anxiety had gone. In fact, I felt completely sober, clear-headed, but physically slow. Suddenly, after a while, I saw my friend Jess. She'd come to see how I was doing. She'd been there before with me on shrooms, but I hadn't seen her in so long. "Are you feeling it yet?" "Not really. I just feel dehydrated. I think they might be low-dosed." However, I felt this negative feeling in my gut when I looked at her. I remembered the fakeness and wondered why she was even here. She cheated on me. She's not my friend. Jack called out, "What are you doing? Come back." Why is he trying to stop me from seeing Jess? I thought. For a brief second, reality struck me. What am I doing? I looked up to see nothing but the cool air. Night was commencing. Shivers went down my spine. My anxiety grew rapidly. I knew I was delirious. Then I was back to the strange realm. We decided we needed to get back. Things were becoming more and more weird. We somehow made it to my apartment. Jack insisted on staying to look after me. Whilst the PS4 was on, I thought I'd make a drink for my guest. I saw my dad there. His face seemed much younger, but anger could be seen in his face. "Don't invite people without telling me. This isn't your place." I sulked off like a child back to my room. I opened the window, pulled out a Lucky Strike and puffed it. It was euphoric, but just as I was beginning to have my first few inhales, I heard Jack run into my room. "Close the window right now." "Why?" He slammed it back and a look of terror was on his face. "You're not in a good way." "Shut up. I invited you to my dad's apartment for the night to chill. Don't be a pain." "You're fucked. This isn't your dad's place. Your dad has passed away. We need to sober you up. I'm worried." "I'm fine." I didn't take any real notice of what he was saying. In fact, I barely even recognized him. Why is he in my house? I knew I was supposed to be doing something today. I had forgotten I had taken Datura, forgotten who Jack was, and forgotten who I was. This terrified me. Paradox after paradox, I felt I was insane. I carried on smoking. My memory is still fuzzy at this part of the experience. According to Jack's recollection, I was angrily speaking gibberish. Not just a mix and match of words, but complete fluent gibberish, as if I was speaking another language. However, things got even more intense, and this is where my memory is really hazy. Jack told me that I was puffing away on an imaginary cigarette, talking to myself for an hour. Once he came into the room, however, he saw that I was in serious delirium. My arms were bleeding. I felt as though pain would take me away from this hellish reality. Pain would make me feel normal. Pain would zap me back into a microsecond of reality to have a glimpse back on normality. Just to be clear, I have never been into self-harming, and before this, had been free from any mental illnesses. This was the only antidote for me to escape this hell. Only a few minor cuts were in my arm before I dropped the pocket knife in a small puddle of blood. This was not the enlightening experience I thought I may have. After Jack moved me to bed, he said I lucidly told him I was sobering up and was fine. This couldn't be further from the truth, but this truth was found only too late. The whispers pounding my mind were unbearable. I'd lost my mind. After I crashed, I found myself on Jack's sofa. He found me lying unconscious on the floor of my kitchen, with butter spread all over the floor and cat food on top of the fridge. Eventually, after a few days, I was back into normal reality, yet the effects have never completely subdued. The existential dread of the trip was so real and so horrifying. I have been diagnosed with manic depression and general anxiety. Jack never really spoke to me in the same way, and I feel completely alone, knowing that just behind this very thin fabric of normality is hell just around the corner. Datura is the antithesis of enlightenment. It is the destroyer of hope. This trip was not a good one, as I might have caused myself some permanent damage to my body. Do not try this, as I was stupid enough to try. In terms of drug, it's like heroin compared to weed. It's deadly. I am only writing this experience not to encourage, but to hopefully stop someone from trying it. This is about 2% of my trip that I remember. 1:30 p.m. I was looking into drugs on Arrowhead and found Datura, and immediately knew that I had one of those plants in my backyard. So I call my friend over who is 6 foot 3 inches and plays football, so he is super strong as I do not work out, so he could easily overpower me just in case shit got sketchy, which it did. I took 10 seeds from the plant and brewed it with 2 cups of water and drank it. 35 minutes in. I feel it coming up, like shrooms somewhat. After about 10 minutes, I stop feeling the high and just trip. I look around the room and I saw my friend using his cell phone. He drops it, and I pick it up for him and hand it back. According to him, about every 10 minutes for the next 2 hours, I would be picking up his invisible phone and hand it to him. He just said thanks every time to avoid a bad trip. 1 hour in. I'm completely tripping. I hardly remember it, but I know I was in my hallway talking to my desk, thinking it was my ex-girlfriend. I started to cry and yell at the desk, and I punched the mirror from becoming so mad. I walked away from the desk after about 2 minutes, to me. My friend recorded the whole trip to show me today as I tripped less than 24 hours ago. He was telling me that I stood in the hallway laughing for a couple of hours, looking at the desk, having conversation in a form of zombie Latin, spoken Latin. He showed me a small part of the video. It was horrible. I was literally saying nonsense with a word in Latin I could understand, which was grandpa. Then I don't remember what happened after, but nothing bad I've been told. 4 hours in. I remember getting out of my house, and my friend immediately tries to put me back inside, or at least in the backyard. I panic and try to punch the devil in the face as I had actually hit my friend. I ran so fast into the street and barely missed a car. I remember feeling that was a spaceship, and I had missed my only ride out of this planet. Instantly, my friend detained me, and I thought I was in trouble, so my vision got red. The grass was even trying to help me by sticking the blades out to attempt to cut my friend's leg off and free me. We got inside, and I noticed the smell of something burning. I stumbled to the kitchen, and my friend said I went to my pantry and kept throwing food out. I don't remember after. 6 hours in. I was inside my room with my friend listening to Spangle, and in the video I stared at my hand endlessly, which my friend told me I did for about 2 hours. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw my Japanese fan. A little girl came in and walked out in front of it and walked away. This beautiful girl I hadn't recognized was a mystery, so I followed her to my brother's room. My friend said that I kept mumbling, "My girlfriend is here," which I assume is my ex because I'm currently not dating. I busted up into tears in my brother's room, asking myself why did my relationships burn? After all that, I remember my head was hitting something soft, and I woke up this morning with slight visuals. The after effects. When I got out of bed, I went downstairs to get some cereal, and I got the milk out and started to pour a little bit, and I saw a huge stream of milk, as if I had turned it completely upside down. Whoa, that's how I shall preface this. Just last week was the first time I had even heard of this stuff. The person who gave me the seeds told me the stories of the soldiers at Jamestown, and I thought, wow, I have to try this crap. Now, I am no novice drug user. I've pretty much tried everything, but I don't think I was prepared for the stinkweed trip. I had about 11 grams of jimsonweed seeds, so I ground them all up into a powder almost. Initially, I tried to smoke a pinch or two in my bowl. This didn't seem to have any effect, so I began to eat it in gram increments. I would wait about 20 minutes and then eat another gram. Nothing seemed to happen, although I did start to feel a bit floaty, and my peripheral vision was blurred and full of motion that didn't really exist. At this point, I was very disappointed, so I went to bed. Well, evidently it takes longer to kick in than I expected, because when I got up to go to the bathroom about 2 hours later, my motor functions did not exist at all. I fell at least 24 times and ran into every piece of furniture in existence in my apartment. I broke at least 1 toe, cracked 2 ribs, and bruised my tailbone, let alone the scrapes and bruises on my forearms, knees, and butt. I also was talking gibberish, according to my mother, with whom I live with, and whom I scared shitless during this event. I walked into her bedroom at 5:30 a.m. and began rummaging around. When she woke and asked what I was doing, I replied, "Relax," and then let loose a 10-minute stream of gibberish, which I felt made perfect sense. I also had in-depth conversations with myself, although I cannot remember what the hell about. I imagine I was still pretty fucked up for almost 2 days. I was unable to read small print as well until this afternoon, 2 days later, and I finally stopped seeing weird movement in my peripheral vision. Aside from the injuries I sustained, I think I would try it again, in a smaller dose, and preferably with someone else, and most likely outdoors, where there is no furniture or doorways to navigate. If you're considering trying this stuff, be wary and take small doses.